Hola, ¿cómo están? Les saluda Livier Castori y estamos transmitiendo desde la ciudad de Toronto para todo el mundo. Recuerden que este es el momento para conectarse en Ahora Canadá, Go Live TV y por supuesto Cuéntame un libro. Como pueden ver, el día de hoy estoy en The Word on the Street, un festival de libros y de autores que se lleva a cabo aquí en Toronto y que es uno de los más importantes en Canadá. ¿Qué les parece si vamos a ver a todos esos autores, editoriales que encontramos el día de hoy y vamos a conocer un poquito más de la historia de este festival? ¿Les parece?
The Word on the Street es una celebración nacional de lectura, escritura y alfabetización. Cada año se organizan cientos de lecturas de autores para visitantes de todas las edades y un mercado que presenta la mejor selección de libros y revistas de Canadá. A fines de la década de 1980, el Comité de Promociones del Consejo del Libro y las Publicaciones llegó a la conclusión que era necesario un festival para promover autores, libros, revistas canadienses y qué mejor lugar para celebrarlo que Toronto, la capital editorial de Canadá. Fue así que en septiembre de 1990 se celebró el Festival del Libro y la Revista de Toronto, también conocido como The Word on the Street. The Word on the Street ha pasado de ser un festival de 40,000 amantes de los libros a convertirse en el festival anual de libros y revistas más grandes de Canadá. Atrae a más de 200,000 visitantes cada año. A lo largo de los años, el festival se ha mantenido fiel a sus principios de fomentar la conciencia y el aprecio por la palabra escrita en la cultura canadiense y ha redoblado su compromiso de promover a los artistas locales, defender la alfabetización y reunir a los habitantes de Toronto para la mayor celebración de lectura. WOTS también ha crecido en alcance, expandiéndose a festivales hermanos en todo el país y desarrollando programación adicional durante todo el año. El lugar del festival en la comunidad literaria nacional ha atraído a algunos de los autores más célebres de Canadá, como Margaret Atwood, David Suzuki, Tania Talaga, entre otros. Y por primera vez Cuéntame un libro se une a esta celebración.
Y ahorita nos encontramos en otro de los stands con una de las escritoras que también se presentan el día de hoy. Ella es Eki y bueno, vamos a conocer un poquito más del trabajo que ella está realizando. How are you, Eki?
I am good, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, thank you.
Inspired to start writing these books. I'm an author and I write children's books, and I became an author because I was looking for books like the books that I write to teach my kids about African history. There are no books out there that teach kids, that are well researched, that teach kids about African history in a way that is factual and engaging. So this was my first book.
Okay.
It's called Idia of the Benin Kingdom.
Okay.
And Queen Idia lived in what is now Nigeria. And she was the first female warrior of her tribe. And I couldn't believe that there were no books about her. So I wrote about her, and I had the books beautifully illustrated. And this book teaches kids to follow their dreams, because she was the first female warrior of her tribe. You may want to be the first of anything. You could do anything you want to be. So these books are empowering. I have 4 titles in total. This is on Queen Ishinga. She lived in what is now Angola. And this follows Imhotep. He lived in what is now Egypt. And this book is about King Sunjata, who lived in what is now the country of Mali. My first 2 books also have activity books that makes African history more engaging.
Perfectly. Yeah.
Yes, they do, because my story is not that I always wanted to be an author, but the need was what created the passion. And I think when kids see me being an author, they believe that they too can do anything they want to be. If they see anything in the world that they want to change, they can change it too.
Okay, perfect.
You can find my books on my website. I ship worldwide. Free shipping if you buy above $50.
Okay.
My website is ourancestries.com.
Perfectly.
I'm translating my books into Spanish.
Ah, yes.
What language are you speaking?
Spanish.
My books are coming out in Spanish in about a month. So you can find Spanish translations of my book on my website as well.
Perfectly. Good news. Así que en español también vamos a encontrar el material. Así que les voy a poner toda la información en donde podemos adquirirlo. Gracias. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alessandra, and this is my first book. It's called The Boy Who Cried Poop, and it's about the time that my brother pooped in a pool in Mexico in 1992, and I guess the message of the story is everybody poops their pants sometimes, and it's okay, you know? Happens to the best of us. It's illustrated by Brazilian illustrator Guilherme Carson, and it's being published by Quarto, and it's coming out here in North America next week, June 6th. And I wrote it because I always wanted to be a writer, and a few years ago I started doing something called Bookstagram on Instagram, where you can find me at Read with River, and I wanted to write my own, so I did, and here we are. It will be coming out in Spanish next year, I believe, and also French and Danish and Korean.
Hello, my name is Russell. I'm the author of 5 suspense thrillers. My first was Pandora's Succession, followed by Unsavory Delicacies, which is an ebook short story trilogy. Then I followed through with the Eddie Barrow series, Chill Run, and then I went back to the Ridley Fox Nita Paris series with the Meter Code, and then I just recently published Jam Run, which came out on March 31st, 2023. So if you enjoy suspense thrillers with conspiracies, martial arts, sex, betrayal, and revenge, you don't need to look any further. Visit my website, russellparkway.com, right now.
Hi, my name is Tiara, and I am the author of 2 books, 2 Times Removed Volume 1 and 2 Times Removed Volume 2. They are 2 short story collections of Indo-Caribbean fiction, and essentially the stories talk about different aspects of life, exploring culture, identity, family relationships, personal relationships, and just essentially balancing wanting to maintain one's culture while also living in a different culture. I got started writing quite a while ago, probably about 7 years ago. This book came out in 2021, this one in 2022, and there is a 3rd and final volume that will be coming out in 2023 in November. So that will wrap up the collection. So all the books can be purchased on Amazon.
My name is Rosant, and my book, the title, True is my name, and the subtitle, The Memoir of a Kurdish Hero's Daughter. So my father is, he was father of Federation. He wrote 40 books, and I inherited writing from him, and I dedicated my book to him. It's my journey when the uprising in 1991, the city of Halabja was gas poisoned, and the Kurdistan was occupied and gas poisoned. It was a genocide, part of genocide in the uprising. We fled the country, and I went to Turkey, and I stayed for a while, and then as a refugee I came to Canada. I built my life here, and I'm happy to put everything in my memo. It's a real life story.
Another thing I really loved is that Lucky is the caretaker of her grandmother Stella. And Stella is, getting older. She has some memory issues. She will, show up all of a sudden at like a gas station across the street after you know, Lucky wakes up in a panic, where's grandma? But like there's also another character in the book, one of the other witches, whose name is Letty, and she's a single mother. She's caring for her child as well. And the thing that I really love is that, you know, I feel like this idea of protagonists not only having to save the day, but also still continue to care for their loved ones, and that you can't just push this off. You know, there's so many ideas about like the hero's journey where, you know, you get help from people, but I mean, not everybody is going to be able to help you. Sometimes you have to help other people while you're also carrying out whatever you need to carry out to move forward. So I just thought that was amazing, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role of caretaking in the book, and also the connection between magic, care, and community.
Absolutely. So I was recently in LA. I was working on that new Stephen King Welcome to Derry. That
just real casual. Just working for Stephen King in LA.
Deal. He wasn't there. I did meet his grandson.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, he got me coffee. I was like, so which book of your grandfather's your favorites? And he's like, I don't know, I've read like 2 of them. And I was like, went out of my office.
True grandson of a writer, though.
Yeah, he's like, ew. I was like, okay. Although one time, I can't believe I'm just saying this, okay, one time we were in a meeting. This is terrible. This is like, don't tell anyone, guys. We were in a meeting, and I said, forgetting that he was in the room, the poor kid, I said, God, why was Stephen King so obsessed with periods? What's wrong with that guy? And then everyone was quiet, and I was like, what's going on? And then I was like, oh my God, Ethan. Don't sneak up on me like that. Thank you, I'll take that coffee. Anyways, so yeah, I was in LA and working in this room, you know, it was for Warner Brothers. So it's like, you know, you learn the terrible realities of what actually people are saying and thinking behind the scenes. And I remember hearing them say, we can't give any of these characters, any of the women, children. Because if we give them children in this show, all people are going to think about when she's not with her kid is, where's the kid? Who's watching the kid? She's a terrible mother. And when the kid is on the screen with her, they're going to think, how boring. This is so boring. So their answer to that was, no kids. No kids for anyone. Because that's realistic. And so, first of all, did someone clap? I thought I heard someone clap to no kids. I'm like, I have 3 kids. They're not with me today, so. So I remember hearing that, and I thought, God, that's awful. And then I realized, you know what, that's true. That things are set up. And I'm like, well, who made that problem? I'm pretty sure you guys are the ones that made that problem. But anyways, and it is very real. We judge women by their either, you know, if they're mothering or they're not mothering, their choice to have kids or not have kids, like it's anyone's business. Apparently it's everyone's business. And so I thought about that a lot, and you know, when I was writing Venko, Lucky is the role of caretaker, and it is a privilege, but it's a privilege she doesn't know is a privilege, like a lot of things. That was my own experience with you know, my grandmother and her sisters, who gave me everything, who taught me how to tell a story. But you know, when you're 13 and you're in a small community and all your cousins are out stealing canoes from the cottagers and you're stuck with 4 old ladies playing euchre, you're like, why me, God? This is terrible. I want to be out getting in trouble and eating bologna in this hot sun instead of learning everything there is to know about story. So I gave that to Lucky. I gave her, you know, the role of caretaker, who doesn't quite understand her power, and that her power is fully available and accessible and is with her. And Letty was really important to me as the mom in the role, because her mothering is a part of her power. So Letty is the witch that is responsible for making, when this Okay, so the great bisexual evil has a name. His name is J. Christos, and no, it is not a coincidence that his initials are JC. So when he sort of shows up, when he's nearby, Letty is the witch that is responsible for making the house seem invisible. And the way that she can do that is she has come out of an abusive relationship, and so she is very, very good at making herself small. So she has spent many years learning how to be invisible to stay alive. And so it then transfers into her ability to protect her coven. And so it was important to me to represent different stages of how, we are all sort of part of this chain of care, which really is absolutely the most difficult thing you'll do, but that ensures that you are part of a chain of knowledge so that it doesn't get broken, right? I learned very young. My community, we were moved several times, not by choice. And the one thing that we kept with us was stories. And the way that I was taught, Lee Miracle actually explained it to me when I was talking about there's so many stories in my community, and she said, because your community had to move. And when you move, especially when you don't have a lot of notice, you have to carry everything that's important to you, but your hands should be holding the hands of young people and your elders, right, to take them with you. So everything that you need to be who you are as a community, you can carry in a story, because you can carry that, in your chest. And so that's a part of that knowledge, that transfer of making sure that, when you get to where you're going, you remember who you are.
What am I working on now? Well, right now I have a lot of things on the go. I'm working on like a TV script with actually rather wildly a former student of mine who I taught in my first year teaching. So what's wild is I was 25 and he was 19. So now, we're like more, like he has 2 kids, it's funny. So we're working, and he's a writer. So we're working on a TV pilot together, and then I am working on my next novel, which is still a thriller, but this one I was super contained, one day, and the next one I'm trying to do the opposite. It's like the ocean and like around the world in 80 days, kind of wild adventure. I want to throw in like a love story. I really love rom-coms. Like rom-coms are like, if I could come back in my next life, it would be like as a rom-com writer or actor or something, because I just like a good rom-com. My husband and I have 3 boys, and they like on Mother's Day they're like, guess we have no choice to watch a rom-com with mom. So yes, but I'm working on my novel. And then, I also took a bit of a break to just parent and spend time with my dad and clean my house, which I don't do enough. It'll always be there. Yeah, it will. I didn't bait, like my mom is not Danielle Steele. I did take her name, which to me, because I think that Marilyn Millay's a stage name, like a pen name, is one of the best. Like I feel, I don't like to like brag about my own characters or writing, but I really feel like in terms of parts that I play, characters that I've written, she's one of the best ones. Like she's just rock solid, funny, has her life together, loves her kid, loves her grandkids, she's rich, she's got it all. But I do think that I took the mother-daughter dynamic, and again, it's very positive in the book. They do have this secret, which my mom and I don't have that I know of, but but their dynamic is very kind of bouncy, loving, and that's the way that my mom and I are. I mean, we almost have like a shtick, and so I think that she would take it as a compliment. My husband, on the other hand, because Paul, the husband in the book, is like, you know, like has to be kind of told what to do and given specific orders, and he's still like, where am I supposed to be? What's going on? We're having a party? And so my husband is like, can you mention events that I'm not actually like that? And he's not like that. But I do, again, think that idea of the emotional load, you know, is a big one. So, yeah. So yes to my mom, no to the husband.
What's the worst advice you've ever received as an author?
I think the worst advice that I've received would be more as a writer is the idea that you have to go like all in, right? That you have to be, in order to call yourself a writer or to be a writer, or let's say anyone in this audience or anywhere here has like an ambition to write a novel or a book or a short story or a play or a TV show or, I don't know, a poetry collection. The idea that you have to then, you know, carve out an office space at your home and get up at 5 a.m. and write for 3 hours, and that everything that you write should be, you know, decent, and if it's not, then why are you bothering? Like, I really believe that idea is the same idea that if we all decided we were going to start exercising, that we would say that we want to run the Ironman. Like, that's not going to happen, right? So to me, even for myself, like, I'm a professional writer now. I've written 4 books, and the only way sometimes that I can do it is by writing for 20 minutes. Like, sometimes I write for 20 minutes while, you know, I would when they were younger, like, put my kids in front of one episode of a TV show and go and try to hammer out 20 minutes. Like, I actually think that instead of the idea of like really carving out the time and space, you know, I need quiet and I need a cup of hot tea and I need all these things, you have to do the opposite. You have to like teach yourself to write anywhere, at any time. Don't tell yourself, I can't write if it's loud, I can't write if it's too quiet, I need to be here, I need this, I need that, I need to be... Like, you should be trying to write anywhere and really expand your horizons and write for short stints. Especially now, because like 3 hours, like I couldn't do that now. So I think that the worst advice is the idea that if you want to be a writer, you have to like, you know, turn your whole life upside down. I would say my advice would be, if you want to be a writer, like, set aside 20 minutes 3 times a week and sit down and write, and it doesn't even matter what you're writing. And if you do that, eventually something will come together. But the idea that it has to be taken like super seriously and you need this very particular set of circumstances to make it happen, that's just not doable for most of us. So,
thank you.
It was, you know what, I'm still in the process of transitioning. Like, I have not been able to quit, because teaching is like, we're both teachers. My husband is an elementary vice principal. Like, teaching, it goes in deep into like the marrow of your bones. Like, even for example, the fact that this was running late today, like, I'm like, all right, you know, this is stressing me. Like, we live by the bell, right? Like, teachers are like, you know, if you want something organized, I always say, like, you want something organized, give it to a group of elementary teachers. They will like get that together, like, boom, no problem. So for me, what happened was more I was still teaching full-time when my first book came out in 2016, and I took a year off, and then I went back to work 2017-18, and that was the last year that I taught full-time. And so my second book came out in 2018, so I was finishing it and then publishing it, and then I have 3 kids. Like, I basically like almost had a nervous breakdown. Like, it was just too much. And unfortunately, you know, as I was saying to Arpita, like, you can't go halfway in teaching. Like, it's you're in or you're out. You can't be like, even if you try to like phone it in, which I can't do, like I just don't have that in me. You still have to be there every day, and the kids are like, miss, you'll miss, you know, what about this essay? Like, when's it due? And you still have to mark everything, and so I couldn't do that. So I stepped away, and then I continued to do like some supply teaching, but it wasn't even like, you know, you'd be surprised, like you met teaching, like I said, it goes into your bones, you miss it. So I slowly sort of off-ramped, and then eventually resigned from full-time. But I still miss it. Like I still, the hitting like those rare moments, especially teaching like say high school English, when you're teaching Shakespeare and you make like a joke and the kids all laugh, then you're like, I will never achieve this moment in my life again. Nothing will ever be. I can actually specifically remember teaching grade 9 and we were doing The Merchant of Venice, and I cracked some punny joke and they all really laughed, and I actually was like, top 5 life moment right there, like I'll never do better than this. I got a bunch of 14-year-olds to laugh about Shakespeare. So yeah, I miss it. And so I do some teaching at Sheridan, and but it'll never leave my bones. And I have to try, like even in situations like this, not to be like, okay, are the rows in order? Like, let's just make sure we're all good. Does everybody have water? Okay, we're good. We can start.
And I see groupings.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. It really, the late thing, like everything. You're just yeah, it's fun. Never leaves you.
No. But I like that. I'm looking at my husband with that off-ramp comment.
Yes,
yeah.
The off-ramp.
There's an off-ramp.
There is an off-ramp. Of course, there's always an off-ramp. But you'll be surprised if you off-ramp how much you miss it.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe that is why so many teachers retire and then they come back to teach again.
Yes. Teenagers are remarkable in that, like, they're actually quite wonderful. You know, they don't have that reputation, but especially this generation, like they're really, as I got towards the end of my career, like they're smarter than us now. They really actually are. Like they know a lot that we don't know. It's pretty. Now you feel humbled because you're like, how do I work this? What I don't understand. Or if you talk about TikTok, they're like, oh my God, you're like a year behind. No one. So it is humbling. And I try not to do that very much because most of the people in my books are kind of evil, and so I wouldn't want someone to be like, wait a minute. But I do name people after friends and family with the sort of caveat that it's not actually you, right? Like I might name a character Arpita, but it doesn't. When Arpita goes and like murders somebody, I'm like, that wasn't you.
Will you?
I could, sure.
And that will be me. It will be named after me.
Yes.
Okay.
But I do. There's one character in the still books. She's a police officer. Her name is Hollis, and I did base her off a friend of mine because, like Marilyn Millay, she's a good character, so the friend could be proud. But no, generally I use names, and people love that, right? Like I use my kids all play hockey, so I have a lot of hockey family friends, and then yeah, they'll say, and actually one of the guys dad's on my hockey team, someone said to him, oh, I'm reading this book and one of the characters has the same last name as you, and he was like, funny story. That's like, I know her. So yeah, that was a nice moment.
That's a great question. I think we have time for one more.
Yeah.
One more? Yeah.
Hi, thanks for that.
Hi.
So awesome. As a teacher and as a writer, would you recommend mentorship? Would you recommend finding a mentor as a writer, or would you advise against it?
Definitely, absolutely. So there's a lot of great mentorship programs. Actually, Flying Books, I just saw Martha Sharp, she runs Flying Books. I saw her, she's on a bike somewhere. Flying Books is an indie bookstore in Toronto, and they have a mentorship program that I was a mentor for a long time. And You know, they pair you with a writer. And actually, like, do you know Ashley O'Dran? She wrote The Push, which was like #1 New York Times bestseller. She did a mentorship through Flying Books with Amy Jones, who was actually on the stage next. So it's such, especially in Toronto, like it's such a small world. And so many of the writers that I know, like we know through mentorships, or we did a course together or a program. So it's such a good way of fleshing out what you want to do. And also I have to say, like, one of the biggest steps in becoming a writer is admitting that you want to be a writer, right? Like saying it out loud to somebody. And so the mentorship where they're like, okay, you're a writer, let's see what you're working on. And you're like, oh, it's kind of like going to a personal trainer, right? You're like, I want to get in shape. And then they're like, okay, start doing push-ups. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. So that's a very similar thing. It's really, mentorship is key. I would not, because I started writing when I had babies, I would never have gotten through it without mentorship in many different forms over the years. So specifically Flying Books is a great one, but there's lots of other ones. You can take writing courses at the library. Like there's anything structured that sets any kind of deadlines or accountability is a fantastic way to get started. It really is. And or even just to continue if you're stalled, if you're writing and you're stalled. So yes, absolutely.
Espero que les haya gustado el programa que tuvimos el día de hoy. Sí fue muy especial porque estuvimos haciendo cobertura en The Word on the Street. Ya saben que cada año se lleva a cabo este festival de libros más importante de todo Canadá. Así que si este año no alcanzaron a venir, pónganlo en su agenda para el siguiente año, para que estén atentos y no se pierdan la oportunidad de conocer este grandioso festival. Pero ya saben que antes de terminar nos vamos a ir con Pepe Cantellano para ver qué sorpresa y qué autor nos tiene. Mientras nos vemos el siguiente martes de Movimiento con más sorpresas.
Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo están? Muy buenas noches. Yo soy Pepe Cantellano y les doy la más cordial bienvenida a otro martes de lectura aquí en Cuéntame un libro a través de Ahora Canadá. Esta noche pues vivimos un programa especial porque en Toronto se llevó a cabo el Festival del Libro y bueno, aprovechando la ocasión quiero leerles ahora a una autora de origen canadiense. Se trata nada más y nada menos que de Margaret Atwood. Ella nació en el año de 1939 y es una excelente novelista, cuentista que estoy seguro a ustedes les va a gustar muchísimo. Así que los invito para que se queden hasta el final de esta cápsula y podamos disfrutar de esta maravillosa lectura que he preparado con muchísimo cariño para todos ustedes. Pan, de Margaret Atwood. Imagina un pedazo de pan. Bueno, no hace falta imaginarlo. Está aquí en la cocina, sobre la tabla del pan, en su bolsa de plástico, junto al cuchillo del pan. Ese cuchillo es uno muy viejo que conseguiste en una subasta. La palabra pan está tallada en el mango de madera. Abres la bolsa, pliegas el envoltorio hacia atrás, cortas una rebanada. La untas con mantequilla de cacahuate, después miel y lo doblas hacia adentro. Un poco de miel se te escurre entre los dedos y lo lames con la lengua. Te lleva cerca de 1 minuto poder comerte el pan. Este pan es negro, pero también hay pan blanco en el refrigerador. Y un poco de pan de centeno de la semana pasada, antes redondo como un estómago lleno, ahora está a punto de echarse a perder. De vez en cuando haces pan, Lo ves como algo relajante que puedes elaborar con las manos. Imagina una hambruna. Ahora imagina nuevamente un pedazo de pan. Ambas cosas son reales, pero tú estás en el mismo cuarto con solo una de ellas. Ponte en otro cuarto. Para eso sirve la mente. Ahora te encuentras sobre un colchón delgado en un cuarto caluroso. Las paredes están hechas de tierra seca y tu hermana, más joven que tú, está contigo en el cuarto. Tiene mucha hambre, su vientre está hinchado, las moscas se le posan en los ojos y tú las espantas con las manos. Tienes un trapo sucio y húmedo y se lo pones en los labios y en la frente. El pedazo de pan es el mismo que tú has estado guardando desde hace días para ti. Sientes la misma hambre que ella, pero todavía no te sientes tan débil. ¿Cuánto va a durar esto? ¿Cuándo vendrá alguien más con más pan? Piensas en salir a ver si encuentras algo de comer, pero afuera en las calles todo está infestado de carroñeros y el hedor de los cuerpos lo llena todo. ¿Deberías compartir el pan o dárselo todo a tu hermana? ¿Deberías comer tú el pedazo de pan? Después de todo, tú tienes una mejor oportunidad de sobrevivir. Eres más fuerte. ¿Cuánto tiempo tardarás en decidirlo? Ahora, imagina una prisión. Hay algo que tú conoces, pero que todavía no se lo has contado a nadie. Los controladores de la prisión saben que tú lo sabes y todos los demás también lo saben. Si hablas, 30 o 40 o 100 de tus amigos, tus compañeros, serán detenidos y morirán. Si te niegas a hablar, esta noche sucederá lo mismo que la noche anterior. Siempre eligen la noche. Sin embargo, no piensas en la noche, sino en el pedazo de pan que te ofrecieron. ¿Cuánto tardarás en decidirte? El pedazo de pan era negro y fresco y te recordó un rayo de sol que cae sobre un pedazo de madera. Te recordó un bol amarillo que había en tu casa. Contenía manzanas y peras y estaba sobre una mesa de madera que también recuerdas. No es el hambre o el dolor el que te está matando, sino la ausencia de aquel bol amarillo. Si tan solo pudieras sostener el bol en tus manos, aquí mismo podrías aguantar lo que sea, te lo dices a ti mismo. El pan que te ofrecieron es peligroso y traicionero, y eso significa la muerte. Hubo una vez 2 hermanas. Una era rica y no tenía hijos. La otra tenía 5 hijos y era viuda, y tan pobre que ya no le quedaba nada para comer. Entonces fue a ver a su hermana y le pidió un pedazo de pan. «Mis hijos están muriendo», le dijo. La hermana rica respondió: «No tengo suficiente para mí», y la echó de su casa. Luego, el marido de la hermana rica llegó a su casa y quiso cortar un trozo de pan, pero al hacer el primer corte, brotó sangre roja. Todos sabían lo que esto significa. Es un cuento maravilloso, un cuento tradicional alemán. La hogaza de pan que he creado para ti flota unos centímetros por encima de la mesa de la cocina. La mesa es normal, no tiene ninguna trampa. Un paño azul de cocina flota bajo el pan y no hay hilos que sujeten al techo el pan o el pan ni la mesa al paño. Ya lo has comprobado al pasar la mano por debajo y por arriba y no has tocado el pan. ¿Qué te detuvo? ¿No quieres saber si el pan es real o si es solo una alucinación que te hice ver? No existen dudas de que puedes ver el pan, hasta puedes olerlo. Huele a levadura y parece lo bastante sólido, tan sólido como tu propio brazo. Pero ¿puedes confiar en él? ¿Puedes comerlo? No quieres saberlo, solo imagínalo. Pan, de Margaret Atwood. Espero que les haya gustado este maravilloso cuento. Un cuento que, como pudimos ver, tiene otros microrelatos que nos hace usar la imaginación, que nos hace ver las diferencias entre personas que pueden tener gran facilidad para comerse un pan y personas que tienen dificultades para poder conseguirlo siquiera. Así que bueno, nos enseña a ser un poquito conscientes de lo que somos, de lo que tenemos y a valorar todo eso que tenemos. Y los invito obviamente para que sigan buscando y leyendo otras obras de Margaret Atwood, una escritora que nació en 1939 en Canadá. También los invito para que continúen siguiendo nuestra página aquí en Cuéntame un Libro y por supuesto en Ahora Canadá. Y les pido también que sigan la mía, en donde aparezco como Pepe Cantellano aquí en Facebook, y les va a encantar todo el contenido que tenemos con muchísimo cariño para todos ustedes. No me queda más que despedirme e invitarlos para volvernos a encontrar el próximo martes en punto de las 7:30 de la noche, tiempo de Toronto, para poder disfrutar de más martes de lectura. Yo soy Pepe Cantellano, que tengan una excelente noche. Los abrazo con muchísimo cariño. Hasta pronto.